What is it like to be a swordsmanship prodigy in a world dominated by magic? In this magic academy, where even dogs know a trick or two, the protagonist, Will, can't even perform basic magic. During a magic class, after teaching a spell, the teacher calls Will for a demonstration. He is supposed to control flames with a catalyst. Isn't this just setting him up for failure? Will can't even produce a tiny spark. The teacher is unsurprised, and the other students burst into laughter. Even the teacher mocks Will, calling him a model student only good at academics. The top students can't wait to show off, waving their wands to produce fierce flames. The teacher is displeased with such unauthorized actions. Cheyenne claims he was just trying to help Will, who seemed uncomfortable, but as a top student, the teacher lets it slide. In this world, magic is supreme. Magic is authority, and magical power is strength. This academy honors magical talent above all. For someone like Will, who only knows the theory but can't perform magic, this place is unsuitable. It's an implicit suggestion for Will to drop out voluntarily. Yet, Will has no rebuttal. After class, Cheyenne comes to provoke him with others, because Will can only earn credits by fighting low-level monsters in the dungeon. Cheyenne mocks him for this, which Coretto, one of the few who are kind to Will, witnesses. She knows how gentle and hard-working Will is, but kindness and effort alone can't make one a sorcerer, let alone reach the esteemed title of the Supreme Five Staffs. Cheyenne leaves with these words, taking his followers with him. Coretto comforts Will, telling him not to worry about what happened in class. Instead, Will reassures her, displaying his gentle nature, even seriously complimenting Coretto on her cuteness, which she can hardly resist. Will doesn't care about the mockery from teachers and classmates. He loves this world and admires the strongest magicians, the Supreme Five Staffs, who support the skies. Long ago, when the world faced threats from invaders from the sky, these 5 magicians emerged and drove the invaders away, sealing the sky and bringing peace. The title of Supreme Five Staffs continues to be the highest honor among magicians. Today, the Ice Princess staff might be watching them, and Coretto wonders if they are looking at them too. Will confidently assures her, as if he can see them himself. A memory from childhood suddenly came to Will's mind. He and a girl named Erufaria were discussing the sky. Erufaria said the real sky had the moon and the sun hanging in it, and a beautiful sunset on the other side. She believed that if they could reach the top of the tower closest to the sky, they might see such a sight. To enter that tower, one must become one of the Supreme Five Staffs. Back then, Will had no idea how unreachable this dream was. They made a pinky promise to watch the sunset together one day. Erufaria eventually became the youngest of the Supreme Five Staffs and successfully reached the top of the tower. However, Will still couldn't even perform basic magic. He then went to another teacher, Wakuna. Before Wakuna could get angry about his visit to the dungeon, Will knelt down and explained he was just trying to earn credits. The 2 demon guard bones he brought back were indeed worth 2 credits. The teacher asked if he still hadn't given up on his dream of becoming a Supreme Five Staff. But that dream was too difficult for Will. To reach the tower top, one must advance to the upper college and earn substantial credits in academics, practical skills, and internships. Will, unable to use magic, couldn't earn the needed practical skills credits. This crushed his hopes. The teacher, feeling a bit sorry for him, told Will that not only becoming a Supreme Five Staff, but even graduating was difficult for him. He needed to earn 4 credits that week. Will immediately started searching his notes for a monster worth 4 credits. The teacher said he hoped Will wouldn't go to the dungeon, but accidentally let slip that Baskerville was spotted on the 6th floor. Upon hearing this, Will excitedly thanked the teacher. Unbeknownst to them, Cheyenne had overheard their entire conversation. Seeing a chance to get rid of Will, whom he considered useless, Cheyenne set out for the 6th floor of the dungeon before Will. Cheyenne was not alone. He brought 2 minions with him. Worried about their ability to handle the 6th floor, the minions hesitated, which annoyed the proud Cheyenne. After they quickly corrected themselves, Cheyenne angrily proceeded to the 6th floor. Soon they encountered a large monster. As soon as it appeared, it sent one of Will's minions flying with a punch. The remaining minion, terrified, screamed so loudly that Will heard it. Will, along with his pet Kiki, rushed towards the sound. His speed did not seem like that of a poor student. as he almost instantly arrived near the battlefield. Will did not immediately reveal himself, but hid and observed the battle. He saw Cheyenne sitting on the ground, continuously casting spells at the monster. Will recognized it as the evil spirit Sentinel, worth 10 credits. This type of monster should be on a lower level, so why was it on the 6th floor? Was there an accident with the floors? Cheyenne, who always claimed to be a top student, now looked terrified. His brain was too rigid to think of any strategy, only managing to cast fire spells passively. However, these fireballs couldn't even break the monster's defense. As the monster closed in on Cheyenne, Will prepared to rush out to save him, but then hesitated. Did he really need to save him? Remembering the times Cheyenne bullied and mocked him, Will felt indifferent about saving him. However, the next moment, he remembered the words Erifaria said to him before she left, describing him as not only gentle, but also braver than anyone else. Will decided that if he watched a classmate die in front of him, he wouldn't deserve to stand alongside Erifaria. With that thought, he put on the glasses Erifaria gave him, drew his sword, and charged forward, shielding Cheyenne just in time. Meanwhile, Teacher Edward arrived at Teacher Wakuna's office, displeased, saying that Cheyenne and the others had gone to the dungeon without permission, and asked Wakuna to send a familiar to look for them. Wakuna was about to release a small bird when he heard they were on the 6th floor and felt relieved, knowing Will was there too. He showed the situation on the 6th floor through a crystal ball. Will was fiercely fighting the monster with his sword. Despite having no magical ability, his speed and strength showed him to be an experienced and excellent fighter. Unable to injure Will, the monster tore up the ground, sending a barrage of stones flying at him. Will dodged and closed in on the monster, then suddenly accelerated and disappeared in a cloud of dust. Taking advantage, he jumped behind the monster and plunged his sword into its neck. Cheyenne watched in disbelief. Was this the same timid Will? Beside him, Kiki diligently acted as a camera, capturing the scene. Teacher Edward, just as incredulous, demanded an explanation from Wakuna. Wakuna explained that Will possessed a strength unusual for a mage, the resilience of a dwarf, and the insight to master an enemy's moves after a single glance. Even without magic, he was a unique warrior in this magical world. At that moment, Will had already cut off one of the monster's arms. He then raised his great sword and sliced through the monster's light cannon attack. His strike was even more powerful than thunder. With this slash, he also severed the monster's head, ending the battle. Will emerged from the smoke and extended his hand to Cheyenne, who, far from grateful, bit his lip in anger and frustration. Teacher Edward also struggled to accept this reality. How could someone who does not use magic surpass it? Afterward, Teacher Wakuna severely reprimanded Will, but also awarded him 10 credits. With these credits, Will no longer had to worry about not graduating. He continued to look up at the sky as he passed through the corridors, sharing a silent gaze with Erifaria, who watched him from above. What's it like to be the sole swordsman in a magical world? 5 years ago, Will had nothing. He, unable to use magic, was mocked. He entered the Magic Academy, only because the leaders wanted Erifaria to join. After Erifaria became one of the top 5 mages, Will became worthless. Until one day, Teacher Wakuna took him to the principal's office, where the principal gave him a short sword and Will awakened his power as a swordsman, startling Wakuna beside him. The principal promised to recognize Will's enrollment, even though he couldn't use magic. Tearfully, Will asked if studying at the academy could lead him to the tower, and if becoming stronger could bring him to Erifaria. The principal didn't give a direct yes, but said he would have the chance, which was enough for Will. In today's magic class, Wakuna discussed the academy's promotion. There are mainly 2 ways to advance to the upper academy: create new magic, or earn over 7,200 credits. Achieving the former is rare, most advance by the latter. However, graduating is a challenge for everyone present. Thus, it was essentially a remedial class. Will was there too. Aside from magic, he excelled in all other subjects. Just then, Cheyenne's lackey boasted about him defeating a demon sentinel. Because they fainted early on and missed what happened, waking to find the sentinel defeated, they assumed Cheyenne did it. Cheyenne didn't explain, sitting silently. Seeing Will pass by, instead of thanking him, he angrily confronted him. Why would this incapable person, who can't even use magic, defeat the demon sentinel? Cheyenne was resentful but helpless, and left with his lackeys. Meanwhile, Teacher Edward went to the principal, hoping to have Will expelled, unable to accept someone who surpasses magic without using it. The principal comforted him with a smile, showing him Will's excellent grades in other subjects, suggesting he could become a magical engineer or pharmacist after graduation, as long as he doesn't aim to be one of the top 5 mages. But Will's goal is exactly that, leaving the principal speechless. He suggested letting Edward test Will with Will's future depending on the outcome. Edward gladly accepted and went to find Will. Here's the accurate and concise translation of your text. At this moment, Will and Corretto were together picking up their textbooks. Will can't use magic, and even opening a locker required Corretto's help. There was also a sword inside the locker, which is prohibited at school. Back in the dorm, Will's roommate wouldn't let him leave. Then, the two went to the study room where Will started reviewing his theory classes again, covering the same material from a new perspective to ensure he scores full marks in all subjects except magic. After all, missing even 1 credit could prevent his advancement to the upper academy. Suddenly, Corretto noticed a white hair on his head and shyly asked Will if he should pull it out, but Will declined. While they were laughing, Teacher Edward came to fetch Will for what he claimed was one-on-one tutoring at the practice field. Upon arrival, Edward immediately attacked, his magic materializing like a winding snake beside Will. Will realized Edward's hostile intentions. Indeed, Edward stated the purpose of the exercise. Will had to hit him once to earn 5 credits in practical magic. Failure meant expulsion. After saying this, Edward swung his wand as a huge magic circle appeared under Will's feet. Meanwhile, the principal had called Teacher Wakuna to watch the live stream with him, to see if Will truly deserved to aim for the top 5 mages. Wakuna felt anxious, especially since it was Edward, a man close to reaching the top 5, challenging Will. It was no wonder Edward was upset. Despite reaching the tower's top, he wasn't chosen. However, he didn't use lethal force against Will, only casting a low-level dark magic spell that was surprisingly powerful. Fire chased Will, who was fast enough to dodge and even counterattack, though Edward's defenses were tight. Will felt pain when his kick hit a barrier. As Edward grew more frustrated, he knocked Will back with a gesture, and a large magic circle appeared behind him, knocking Will to the ground. Will's glasses shattered, and his spirit sank. Edward's moves were too fast to parry without chanting, and his attacks and defenses were flawless. Here's the translation of your text into concise and clear English. Will was almost in despair as Edward continued to play with his mind, stating he had only used 2 types of magic, one to burn him with black flames, and the other to block his unsightly acts with a barrier. Edward then demonstrated the ability to multiply a single spell, creating multiple magic circles behind him. Will fired simultaneously while scrambling on the ground to dodge, as Edward waved his wand like a conductor. Will was no match for such a high-level magic instructor and wished he had a sword. After Will was summoned away, Corretto went alone to the locker and couldn't help worrying about Will. What if Teacher Edward whipped or interrogated him? But then, wouldn't that be even better? Suddenly, Will's pet Kiki limped over, scratching at the locker door with tearful eyes. Corretto realized something must have happened to Will and quickly opened the locker. Meanwhile, Edward approached the immobilized Will on the ground, passionately taunting him. Even I can't surpass the top 5 mages, so how can you? Magic is the truth of this world. Once, a dwarf tribe sparked a rebellion with 10,000 soldiers, but a single magician with a wand defeated them all. A sword can never match a wand. Edward stepped on Will's head, but Will refused to give up, determined to reach the top 5 mages. As he struggled to his feet, Edward curiously wondered what drove his belief. To his surprise, it was Will's desire to be with the one he loved. Edward almost lost his composure, mocking, "So, your goal for reaching the pinnacle of magic is a shallow romance?" Ignoring the taunt, Will remained determined to watch the sunset with Erufaria. Suddenly, he heard Corretto's voice and caught the sword thrown to him. Awakening, Will put on the glasses Erufaria had given him. The real battle was just beginning. Edward, unimpressed, continued to release black flames, but Will cut through his magic with the sword. Edward fired 1,000 flames, which Will dodged by leaping and stepping on floating debris, slicing through the black flames and closing in on Edward. Recalling the fierce battle of the dwarf tribe, where a brave dwarf warrior lost all but still made a significant strike, Will acknowledged that swords could match wands. Approaching Edward from above, Will was quicker, breaking his barrier with a sword strike before Edward could react and slashing at him. Edward's wand reached his face, but before the magic could activate, Will's sword had already cut Edward's cheek. Will won the battle, and Edward awarded him 5 academic credits. The principal and Wakuna watched the entire live stream and praised Will's indomitable spirit during the battle, affirming his worthiness. When Arifaria became one of the Supreme 5 staffs, she tearfully said goodbye to Will, gifted him her glasses, and left without looking back. Will, filled with reluctance, promised Arifaria's departing figure that he too would reach the tower to watch the sunset with her. After she left, Will sobbed with shoulders shaking, then turned to teacher Wakuna and declared it would be his last time crying so embarrassingly. Will, true to his word, still has no mastery over magic, but trains daily. He also delivers newspapers to earn money, quickly recovering any papers that fly away due to his speed and even managing to help Kiki on his head. To his surprise, today's paper featured Arifaria, announcing her creation of a new magic spell, bringing her total to 12. Inspired by Arifaria's efforts, Will resolved to work even harder, especially after reading about a decree issued by the Senate, authored by Arifaria herself. Will rushed back to his dorm, asking his roommate Rosti for magical tools since the decree involved collecting ice cores from Frost Infantry. Students contributing would receive a reward. Planning to head directly to the 4th layer, Will relied on Rosti's tools. His roommate, impressed, readily handed over a newly made tool and stuffed some bread for the journey, cautioning him to be careful. Arriving at the 4th layer of the underground maze, Will found many students there, all motivated by Arifaria's decree. Eager to begin, the ground suddenly shook. Shion had used a powerful spell to dispatch a group of Frost Infantry. While his lackeys praised him, Shion felt it was not enough, believing he still couldn't match Will, unaware that Will was also admiring his strength. With no interest in greetings and the infantry quickly being defeated by others, Will ventured deeper. Unexpectedly, he saw a group of monsters attacking a girl. Will immediately intervened, swiftly defeating 3 beasts. The stunned girl quickly apologized and introduced herself as Alice, a 4th-year student. Meanwhile, Coretto and others were attending a theory class with teacher Wakuna, who explained the significance of creating new magic spells. Such innovations could lead to unconditional advancement to the tower, allowing creators to name them. While creators might fade away, the spells named after them would live on forever, immortalizing their names in history. Creating new magic is certainly not an easy task. Arifaria alone has invented 12 types of magic, a feat unmatched by anyone before or since. In the long history, Arifaria is undoubtedly the greatest mage. Coretto and her friends discussed Arifaria's decree and learned that Will was battling Frost Infantry in the dungeon. A close friend bluntly pointed out that Coretto might be jealous of Lady Arifaria, feeling that Will was taken away by a powerful childhood friend. This led to a quarrel in class, and teacher Wakuna sternly reprimanded them. However, Coretto was indeed very concerned about Will and Arifaria's relationship. Meanwhile, Will simply teamed up with the younger student he had saved. Surprisingly, this junior was only 14 years old. She was very kind, which made Will wonder why she wouldn't discriminate against him, given his lack of magical ability. When Alice heard this, she found it even stranger. How could she scorn someone who helped her? After all, she respects anyone with skills, even if they're not magical. This is what normal people think. Alice was also motivated by Arifaria's decree, wanting to help the Supreme 5 staffs and aiming to become a supporter of the sky. Most people in this world have never seen the real sky. What they see is a barrier created by the Supreme 5 staffs with powerful magic. If this barrier breaks, darkness will envelop the world again, and calamity will strike. Hence, the students are so enthusiastic not only to assist the Supreme 5 staffs, but also to contribute to supporting the sky. Alice mentioned that she had once met Arifaria. During a crisis in the dungeon, surrounded by monsters, Arifaria appeared suddenly, froze them all, and gently reminded her to be more careful next time. Since then, Alice became a die-hard fan of Arifaria. She came to the dungeon for Arifaria but found no Frost Infantry, likely because they had already been defeated by others. Even searching magic was useless. While Alice was talking non-stop, Will crouched down to examine the ground because such creatures leave ice shards in their tracks. However, the ice shards here were several times larger than normal, suggesting a larger creature ahead. Without any fear, Will walked forward, putting on his glasses. As expected, a giant beast fell from the sky the next second. Will quickly pulled Alice away as the beast landed, creating a spectacular impact. The countless eyes on its massive head were truly sanity-draining. It was indeed the Frost King, a higher class of the Frost Infantry, worth 6 academic credits, and a unique species on the 4th level. Just as Alice finished speaking, the beast suddenly shot out a shockwave. Fortunately, Will dodged quickly. The shockwave hit the ground, creating a pattern of ice flowers. Will moved Alice to a safe spot, telling her to stay there while he handled things alone. Alice, however, didn't want Will to face the Frost King by himself, as it was immune to physical attacks and could freeze anyone on contact. It was known as a bane to melee fighters like dwarves, only vulnerable to long-distance magical attacks. Despite this, Will remained calm, reassuring Alice not to worry since he had defeated the creature numerous times before. Will skated across the ice, launching himself forward and swiftly avoiding the Frost King's breath. Unexpectedly, the creature's shockwave was persistent, changing direction and chasing Will like a missile. Will, descending from above, rapidly approached the beast, wielding a magical artifact he had obtained from a roommate. The Frost King, enraged, began firing indiscriminately. Alice quickly took Kiki aside, watching as Will's movements blurred. Close to the Frost King, he finally threw the magical artifact, a hook, which latched onto the beast's body. Holding the other end, Will slid under it and secured the Frost King tightly. Since it was a creature of frost, vulnerable to fire and explosions, Will fully restrained it, then ignited a fire device connected by steel wire on his glove by twisting his hands together. The flame traveled along the wire directly to the Frost King and detonated, reducing the beast to ashes and leaving only materials behind. Alice's expression changed instantly upon witnessing this. The once thought incompetent Will was far from the rumors she had heard. Contemplating how to repay him, she heard Will calling her name, smiling and indicating they could return, as the Frost King had left them with plenty of materials. Alice's smile quickly returned. Upon their return, Alice headed straight to the Mage's Tower, removing her disguise on the way and entering a grand hall. Seated there were the Supreme 5 staffs, though the central seat was vacant. Wistoria was among them. Alice reported her discovery at the academy, mentioning Will, an interesting talent who couldn't use magic. She suggested making him a member of the tower. 2 members immediately rejected the idea, but one burly, white-haired man found it intriguing. As internal strife seemed imminent among the Supreme 5 staffs, a red-haired member intervened, suggesting they observe Will during the upcoming Grand Magic Festival, as capable individuals would prove themselves. After the discussion, 3 of the staffs left, leaving only Wistoria and Alice. Wistoria looked forward to seeing Will again with anticipation. To become one of the top 5 staff members, a student needs a score of 7,200. It's Will's turn for the exam, where he must fight a huge golem. Unable to use magic or a sword, Will fails again. In contrast, 2 other students destroy the golem easily, with a single move each. Liana with a score of 10,000 and Lindell, who has a similar score. Then comes Jurius, who uses ice magic to freeze not only his golem, but others as well. Only these 3 have scores above 10,000, making them sure candidates for advancement to the upper academy, while Will struggles even to graduate with just half their scores. Dejected, Will blocks Jurius's path, who frowns upon those weak in magic. Will stands up to clear the way without arguing. As the magical festival approaches, everyone in the academy is excitedly discussing it. This festival, held every 2 years, includes competitions and the chance for top mages to scout talent. Despite not meeting the 7,200 score threshold, it's an opportunity for students to be noticed by the tower factions led by the top 5 staffs: the Thunder, Demon, Flame, Ice, and the 4th being the Light King. Performing impressively could attract any faction's attention. Meanwhile, talent scouts from the Magic Tower will also be present. Despite this, Will doubts his chances. As he and Corretto talk, Alice walks by unnoticed. Will, known for turning a previous festival into a chaotic event, has no plans to compete again. As the festival nears, students practice their magic more fervently. Coretto helps Will open a locker, sensing a barrier nearby. They send Kiki to remove it, revealing a hidden door leading to students gambling, including Cheyenne and his cronies. Cheyenne is displeased to see Will but doesn't confront him with Coretto there. Will asked why he was here. Before Cheyenne could respond, his lackey eagerly explained that they weren't concerned about the betting odds. Cheyenne wasn't jealous of the top three, including Lindell. Frustrated, Cheyenne slapped each of his followers, asserting he hadn't lost to them. He claimed his lower scores were only due to failing the academic tests, insisting he was more skilled in magic. Will seriously watched Cheyenne boast, which only aggravated him more. After class, Coretto bravely suggested he could accompany Will to the dungeon, but Will had to work at a tavern that night. Located in a civilian area, its customers were mostly overworked dwarven miners. Will was well acquainted with them. The miners, aware of the upcoming magical festival, encouraged Will to participate, which he quickly declined. Right after, the boss reminded him not to slack off and to learn from his roommate Rosti, who worked efficiently and enthusiastically. Though Rosti was liked, the miners preferred Will, calling him their dwarven brother. The tavern was filled with a jovial atmosphere. While washing dishes, Rosti questioned why Will, with his connection to teacher Wakuna, didn't pursue a better-paying job. Will didn't want to bother his teacher and enjoyed the company of the hardy dwarves. Unexpectedly, Jurius and his lackeys entered the tavern because other places were full. Jurius, who looked down on Will and the dwarves, quickly angered everyone with a few words and mocked the homeless state of the dwarves, whose world had been destroyed by invaders from above, forcing them to flee to this world where they have been bullied and not allowed to retaliate against the noble mages. Only able to glare in response, the dwarves watched as the group mocked the tavern's food. Jurius's comments grew more offensive until Will stepped out and demanded he retract the insults about the dwarves and their hard-grown beans. Enjoying Will's irritation, Jurius kicked a plate, which hit Will. When his lackeys tried to attack, Will pinned them down. The spilled beer splashed on Jurius. Will declared his actions, more irrational and animal-like than the dwarves, were the most humiliating he had ever endured. Enraged, Jurius froze the entire tavern. Will, pulling out his wand, leaped from a magical formation as icicles chased him, knocking off his glasses and trapping him against a wall. Jurius pointed his wand at Will's chest, creating an ice flower penetrated by the wand, stabbing at Will's chest. Rosti gripped his wand, ready to intervene, but Jurius suddenly decided freezing Will here wasn't enough to appease his anger. He ordered Will to participate in the magical festival, intending to humiliate him publicly. Will shattered the ice column with his body, seized Jurius's wand, and agreed to compete, but demanded that if he won, Jurius must apologize to the dwarves.